and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove, and I'm joined by a man who loves an early US men's national team roster release. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello, I do indeed. Don't we all? Don't we all?
10 days before the game.
Yep.
That's unheard of. It's unheard of. It wasn't even a halftime of a Major League Soccer game on Fox Sports 1.
I know, right? And it wasn't even right after we had finished recording a show, which is strange as well.
Oh, wow. So, yes, we have the 28-man roster for the US's away games to England at Wembley and against Italy in Belgium, which I can't remember why they're doing that, but they are doing that.
Belgium's nice this time of year?
I guess so, yeah.
Sure.
Colin Farrell disagrees, but yes. Okay, we're going to get into the roster. Inclusions, exclusions, what we want to see from this roster, all that kind of stuff. Let's start with the reaction I saw everywhere to Dave Sargent naming the 28-man roster was, is Dave Sargent still naming the rosters? Why don't we have a new coach?
Yeah, I don't think it was that polite either. I'm
guessing.
It
wasn't. No.
Yeah, I mean, and
I put it through a polite British translation.
There we go. I mean, and yes, it is still Dave Sargent naming it because the permanent manager has not yet been named, maybe because he is likely still managing elsewhere, potentially in the playoffs, potentially.
Oh, you're so coy, Taylor. We can't possibly tell who you're talking about.
Yeah, who could I possibly be referring to? That would be my guess. And so, yes, it is still Dave Sargent.
Contract through the end of the year.
Yes.
Dave Sargent,
yes. And I mean, and I'll be totally honest and say, that it limits some of my enthusiasm about these friendlies that I would have much preferred to end 2018 with new manager installed and an exciting time to see what happens next.
Yeah, get the fresh start early. Right?
But there's no sense in my mind really sitting there crying about a non-hired manager.
Yes.
So instead, maybe it's better to look at what we have.
No point crying over unspilled milk.
That's what I was trying to. I was trying to find a way to make that into something about a manager, and instead it went the way I did.
So it's Dave Sargent's final 2 games.
Yeah.
His contract goes through the end of the year. Let's just take it as it is and try and enjoy it. How about that?
It's also not his fault, worth noting. If anything, don't get me wrong, still very frustrated with U.S. soccer and the way that a lot of this approach to the coaching search has been handled, at least from an outsider's perspective. But again, that does not mean that Dave Sargent shoulders any of that responsibility. He's doing the best he can.
He's only got tiny shoulders.
The job
anyway.
he has.
So let's talk about the 28-man roster. First of all, the first big question, why are there 28 players on this roster? Why not the standard 23 that maybe gets expanded to 24, 25? Why has Dave Sargent gone for 28 men on this roster?
Sure. I mean, I think one answer is because, as we've seen it with other rosters, you're going to have injuries drop as we get closer to the time. So maybe he just wanted to give people advance notice. The larger one is because you still have MLS playoffs going on.
Yes.
So you want as many players as you can because we expect there to be one lineup and one roster for the first game against England, and then maybe a very different look for the second game against Italy once we have maybe more of those MLS players on board, in camp, ready to go. I
think that sounds right. And there was a USsoccer.com softball Q&A with Dave Sargent where essentially the questions are set up to explain the roster, right? You don't have to read between the lines too far to see what's going on. It's fine. It's good to get answers in that way. And he basically said, we start, we gather in camp in London on Monday. The game is next Thursday, November 15th. And there's MLS playoffs that Sunday, right? 3 of the games are that Sunday. So those guys can't join really in time to be in the sessions, right?
Even if they could. I mean, even if they left straight from New York or Atlanta or wherever and flew straight to camp.
They'd be knackered.
Then that's the thing, is then even if they got there and were physically there, they're not going to be physically ready to play at the level they need to be at.
So you can basically expect that I think it's 7 players who are involved in the playoffs will not feature in the USA versus England game.
That would
includes
be my
guys
expectation.
Like Tyler Adams, right? He'll be playing for the Red Bulls. Yeah.
And I think that makes sense. And I think that's why, again, we have this larger roster with a lot of redundancies in certain positions, looking specifically at the midfield where there's, 13 players called in, something like that?
Yep.
It's a pretty crowded midfield, I think, because you have so many players playing in MLS or not playing in MLS, so you can have that rotation.
That makes sense to me. Okay. Nothing else to be said on the size of the roster.
No, I don't think so.
Should we dig into who's in and who's out?
Sure.
So let's start with who's out.
Sure.
Because obviously when you get a big roster, there's more room to include everybody. So who are the notable omissions from this 28-man roster?
I think the biggest one for me, strangely enough, was Andrija Novakovic, because we think maybe there's a chance that there's some injuries involved there, correct?
Yeah, there's a Stephen Goff Washington Post story that listed Novakovic as injured.
Yes. So that may just be the extent of it, but this is also Novakovic who got only a couple minutes last time around.
Maybe 10 or
even
so.
more limited minutes before that. And it seems like gets called in, but maybe hasn't impressed or performed at the level he needs to.
He's very clearly behind Josh Sargent and Bobby Wood on the depth chart.
Yeah,
right?
and so maybe it is just an injury, but maybe there's also that element of like, hey man, you got to up your game a little bit. And even if you could potentially play and could recover from injury in time, why don't you focus a little bit more on elevating your game to a point where you're definitely involved.
Do you find it strange that we've only listed 2 forwards in Sargent and Bobby Wood?
Yes and no. I mean, I think the reality is that it's probably going to be that 4-1-4-1 that we've come to expect.
Mm-hmm.
And then with that, you're only going to have one with another one subbing in. But then we also have players like Timothy Weah and Julian Green who could be makeshift forwards if need be. So I think it makes a little bit more sense when you look at it from that perspective.
No Jesse Zardes, I just noticed. I didn't list him as one of my notable omissions, but given that he keeps scoring the goals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's one where they're just giving him a break and letting him stay with Columbus. That said, Will Trapp is in this squad, so maybe it was just more so that Dave Sarachan just kind of was content with what he had, or just didn't. There's also a chance that he just didn't see the use in bringing in a player that he didn't think would get many minutes or any minutes at all to make him leave Columbus in the middle of the playoffs, even though it's international break.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So do you think he talked to Jesse and said, hey, how's your air miles? And Jesse's like, I'm fine. I got plenty.
I don't know if they get miles from U.S. soccer paying for those flights.
Why not? Oh, because it comes to...
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. Okay, how about the other big name that's missing?
I also think they might fly charter as like a national team.
Do they?
That would be my guess, but I don't know.
I'd like to know the answer to that now. Yeah. Okay, Michael Bradley also missing.
Yeah.
Dave Sarachan, again, was asked about this in the softball Q&A, which is what I love to call it. And he essentially said... this trip is valuable to players who haven't had the experience of playing against big European nations away from home,
right.
England and Italy. World Cup semi-finalist, one of them. And Bradley's already got that experience. It's more important for other players to have that experience. And his second reason was that Michael Bradley has basically not had a break in a long time because he's constantly been playing for Toronto. So essentially Michael Bradley's on vacation.
Yeah.
Right? Because Toronto's season was over as soon as the regular season ended. So he's got his feet up somewhere.
There we go. I mean,
sipping a pina colada somewhere.
Yeah, I doubt Michael Bradley ever has his feet up for too long, either because he has, I believe, multiple children at home, but also because he strikes me as a person who likes to stay active and keep working. But yeah, he is one who I was surprised to not see.
No pina colada?
I don't know. You'll have to take that up with him. He had the one shot of espresso.
He's more of an espresso man.
Well, and only one shot for a 90-minute game is what Paul Tenorio informed us. So I found that surprising. So yeah, maybe he is just more of a one espresso type of figure. But he is a surprise omission, I think.
Because we thought he was back after the recall for the two most recent games.
Yeah, and is that veteran presence that maybe helps steady the team a little bit, or maybe doesn't, or maybe it's just the case that Dave Sarachan wanted to bring in some younger players as his sort of send-off series, the players that he felt maybe most comfortable with or most... capable of executing the game plan he wanted.
Did you just accidentally give this the best name ever, the Dave Sarachan send-off series?
I didn't mean to, but sure.
Because part of this is, to me,
the Triple S?
Sarachan calling in a bunch of people to be like, hey, here's all a lot of you guys I gave debuts to. Let's all come and have a big goodbye.
Yeah, that's possible.
The Dave Sarachan send-off series.
Which maybe also explains why you don't have, say, Tim Ream. I'm sure he is Timothy, but Tim Ream in there, because that's a player that maybe he doesn't have the familiarity with.
Yep.
At least as a interim manager as opposed to an assistant coach under Bruce Arena, something like that. But maybe he doesn't want to gamble too much with these final games, or maybe he's going to leave that to whomever the permanent manager is. But I was a little surprised not to see Tim Ream. That said, Fulham haven't exactly covered themselves in glory thus far.
Okay, how about Jonathan Amon?
Yeah.
Jonathan Amon was called up for the first time, got his debut against, I want to say, Colombia. Didn't go, or no, that was Kenny Seth against Colombia.
Yeah, it was Peru.
Got his debut against Peru. I didn't think was particularly great, but he had his moments of danger.
Yeah.
And now no Jonathan Amon on this roster. I have a theory.
What you got?
That Jonathan Amon is under 20 and might be called up for the second stage of the under 20 CONCACAF Championship / World Cup qualifying, which takes place within the international window. So therefore you can call up and you can make some changes. I think we'll see him for the second group stage where the opponents are much tougher. So that's why he's not on this roster.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I do think you're right in your sort of description of his performance, that he had moments of exciting play that I think justify continued looks and continued enthusiasm about him. But it's not as though he stood out head and shoulders above everybody else and he was the one that we were like, oh, he's definitely in there now as a starting spot.
Which is what Tim Weah did, right? And Tim Weah, I think, is a year younger, but you saw him play for the national team and you get this feeling of like, okay, he's one of the big boys now.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
You don't get that with Jonathan Amon. I think he still has things to learn and can benefit from playing for the U20s, and the U20s will benefit from having Jonathan Amon. Yeah. So if that's what happens, then I think I'm okay with that situation. Another quick note on this. I did see a couple of journalists who I think may have had early access to an early draft of the roster mention that Jonathan Amon was in there and Romain Gall was not. And now when it was the final official roster was released, Amon was gone and Gall was in.
So there's a chance that maybe they change things up with the U20s potentially. Yeah. Maybe he gets a look there at a more competitive format.
I'm getting a bit conspiracy theory-ish here, but yeah,
it's possible.
That's what I think has happened with Jonathan Amon.
All that though, I think is interesting because I think the key takeaway from this 28-player roster, one, is when you have 28, you have more players in there, so maybe there's less drama. Yeah, but I think it's interesting that we both sort of been like, yeah, but I understand why. Yeah, but I understand why. Like, there's nobody in there that we're like, how do you not include him? That is ridiculous.
I sort of feel that way about Russell Canaris, except I look and there's just so many midfielders.
I think it's that combined with the season that DC have just had and the schedule that they've just played and like the physicality of Canaris' game, the fact that they were just eliminated. I think maybe that factors into it. Again, he's one that I think we see in January, maybe not in December, or certainly not in December.
You think maybe Canaris is sharing a pina colada with Michael Bradley?
Yeah.
They're in a round. They're doing a round.
Why not? Maybe Canaris and Perry Kitchen are feet up but waiting for that January phone call.
That could be it, yeah. So no Russell Canaris. Anyone else? Any other absences that jump out at you? Oh, also Russell Canaris never called up by Sargent, so maybe he's just not part of the Sargent send-off series.
That could also be. Yeah. That's the Sargent send-off series. Yes, the Triple S. No, I mean I think we've covered like the 5 that we thought maybe could be on that roster. And again, I think it cuts both ways though. That there's nobody that we're both like, because I think McKennie and Pulisic are there, we're sort of more okay with it. But there's nobody that I'm like, how could you not include them? Yeah. But I feel like that's also on the other side, sort of a commentary on the state of the U.S. national team as a whole. That it's sort of like, yeah, okay. Like, I can see how those guys are in there, and I can see how those guys aren't.
Is that part of us trundling towards the end of the Dave Sargent era?
Trundling, yes.
It's a bit like, yeah, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's it. There's no, that's the frustrating aspect of this, again, to go back to it, and then we'll try to drop it, is just that there's no reason to be super excited about these games because so much is going to change, and we don't know if new manager X really rates a lot of these guys, or if maybe new manager X has already put input in. There's so much we don't know that it's impossible to be like, oh, I can't wait. I'm rubbing my feet together. There you go, itchy feet. I'm rubbing my hands together with enthusiasm about where we're going to go from here.
Fair enough. Okay, before we get on to maybe notable inclusions and then what we want to see from these games, I think maybe we should talk about today's sponsor because it's very apt for what we're doing today. Today's show is sponsored by Simple Contacts. Simple Contacts is vision care for the 21st century. So do you remember the olden days, in olden times, when you had to go to the optician and you had to wait in line and you had to make an appointment and it took a long time and you couldn't always get... You don't because you don't wear glasses.
Yeah, the answer to that is no. You're asking the wrong person.
For other people, they were olden times when they had to go and do that, including your wife, Margaret. Happy birthday, Margaret, by the way. I know she listens to every episode.
She does. Of course.
Yeah, I'm sure.
She does not. She's vaguely aware we still do the show.
But she knows that sometimes you have to renew your prescription and it can be a pain. With Simple Contacts, you can renew your prescription online with the Simple Contacts app or at the Simple Contacts website. Makes the whole thing much, much easier.
It does. It's worth remembering they are not a replacement for your periodic full eye health exam, but they do make everything that Daryl Grove just talked about much, much simpler, and thus they make your vision much, much clearer.
And so, in honor of Simple Contacts, which player do you think we will have a clear review of, as if we put in contacts that give us 20/20 vision after these games?
I hope Ethan Horvath. That's a big one for me. We haven't really gotten to who was included on the roster.
But he certainly was.
He was, along with Brad Guzan and Zach Steffen. But Ethan Horvath is one who last we saw had a bit of a howler. Then he was dropped at club level for a good long while. Now it seems like he's back with Club Brugge. They won today, correct?
They played in Club Brugge played in the Champions League today. Ethan Horvath started and they beat Monaco 4-0. I haven't seen a minute of the game. I haven't seen a second of the game. But I know that Horvath has also played the last couple of games for Brugge. So he's back. He's number one and he's winning the Champions League and getting clean sheets against Thierry Henry's team. So this might be the start of the Ethan Horvath comeback.
Exactly. And given what we talked about with MLS players coming into camp, Ethan Horvath would be the one who's not with an MLS team, so it seems like he is maybe the one who's going to start against England.
I didn't even realise that. He almost has to start if we think that maybe you could argue that the goalkeeper doesn't need to be there for every day of practice, so Stefan and Guzan, they could sneak into that England game.
And if that's the case, then again, that gives us a clearer picture that if Ethan Horvath is in camp the whole time and still doesn't get minutes, or maybe looks shaky in the minutes he does get, that gives us a better understanding of maybe that is who he is for the national team.
So maybe
but if he comes in and has a good game, or even has a sort of error-free game, then that might be enough to merit continued looks as a potential number one.
What if he was tasked with carrying in the happy send-off Dave Sargent cake and he dropped it on the way in? Then that's how we'll know he didn't start.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what definitely would have happened.
That's how we'll know he didn't start, is if he drops the cake?
What I mean is if he drops the happy send-off Dave Sargent cake and everybody sees it happen, that's when Dave Sargent and coaching staff will be like, oh, we shouldn't start this guy. It doesn't matter if Stefan and Guzan are a little tired from the flight. Let's put them in instead.
All right.
Yeah.
So hopefully that doesn't happen.
Hopefully that doesn't happen.
What about for you?
For me, sorry, I was just going to steal your answer, essentially. I hadn't really thought about it. Maybe Darlington Nagbe will know, if we get to see Darlington Nagbe play alongside some of these younger kids, we'll know if he fits in alongside McKennie, Adams, Pulisic and co, or if he really is the odd man out.
Yeah. I mean, I think that makes sense.
It's just been so long since he was in. I want to talk about him in more detail, actually, when we get out of the ad read and back into the show.
All right. Well, then let's do so, shall we? So if people want to find out more about Simple Contacts, or maybe get some contacts at a discounted rate, how can they do so, Daryl Grove?
If you go to simplecontacts.com/TSS20, you will get $20 off your contact lens order. Use the promo code TSS20. So go to simplecontacts.com/TSS20, use the discount code, the promo code TSS20. You will get $20 off the cost of your contact lenses on your first order. Thank you to Simple Contacts for sponsoring today's show.
And maybe they provide some of our players who need glasses with their eye care before these games. So also, there we go. Thank you for helping them see the field and the ball and score some goals. Why not?
All right, so to notable inclusions.
Yeah.
Who's top of our list for notable inclusions on this roster?
Well, you've already mentioned him, so let's keep it going. So why are you excited to see Darlington Nagbe? Why would you consider him a notable inclusion?
Because I felt, we've talked about this on the show already, right? But I felt for a while that he was in this weird in-between zone where he's still a youngish guy, right? He's in his 20s, he's in his mid-20s, I want to say he's 26, 27. And yet he somehow was excluded from the post Trinidad rosters, along with guys like Michael Bradley, right? Yeah. And I felt like, also because he wasn't as experienced as, say, Josie Altidore, I think there was still value in giving Darlington Nagbe international minutes. So I just felt a little bad for him, especially because we also don't have many essentially creative midfielders that he would have had something to offer. So I'm glad that essentially his time out in the cold is over and Darlington Nagbe is back in the fold.
I feel like there's also a decent...
Out of the cold, into the fold.
There we go. I feel like there's a decent chance that aside from Atlanta fans, people might not even remember that Nagbe hasn't been getting those calls because he is, as you said, he's that player who... It seems like is on that level of Bradley and Josie, where he's seen as one of the people that was responsible for what happened in Trinidad.
Yeah, we all ring the bell of shame at him as he walks down the street.
But then isn't the person who gets that bell of shame at the same time. That's the weird thing.
Yeah.
That, he's in that group, but he's not in that group. And so because of that, I think he's also not really been seen as being in this group. And so I think he's kind of been forgotten. And so it's not that he's a notable inclusion from the perspective of, here's this guy who came out of nowhere, or here's this guy who doesn't deserve this. It's just more so he's back in there. And that's good to see, but he hasn't been there in a long time.
Yep.
So he's notable for that very reason.
And we've constantly struggled for a creative midfielder to unlock some defenses. So hopefully Nagbe gets a chance. And honestly, as always, it's still, even though we like Nagbe, there are still lots of question marks about him, about whether he can perform against really good teams. So if he gets any minutes against either England or Italy, that will be us seeing Darlington Nagbe against high-level opposition in a way that we didn't get to see before.
Yes,
right?
I would agree with that.
And if you remember, he didn't get to go to the World Cup.
Yeah, there's that.
Right.
There's that. Another one who did not get to go to the World Cup, but is a notable inclusion for me, is, you mentioned him very briefly, but Romain Gall.
Romain
Gall! The
Gall!
fact that he is in this squad, even though maybe it briefly looked like he would not be.
Yeah, we don't know that for sure, but at least he's in the final 28-man squad.
He is. And we watched a decent number of clips of him playing, and I think it's fair to say that we were both pretty impressed by what we saw.
I agree. Let's give people the background on Romain Gall first. First of all, he used to be with Columbus Crew. I think he didn't get many minutes. He ended up going to Scandinavia, to Sweden. I can't remember the name of the first team that he went to, but then he got himself a transfer to Malmo, which is basically the biggest club, maybe alongside Gothenburg, in Sweden. He has been playing what looks like...
They're the one that's regularly in the Champions League, put it that way.
Yes. Zlatan's old team?
Yep.
Yeah. He seems to be playing either left centre mid or left mid when he plays for Malmo. What we've seen... we've really liked.
Yes,
yeah,
100%.
All right, so what sort of player is Romain Gall, Taylor?
Sure, I mean, so he has the flair moments, certainly. He can do the step over.
Yeah.
He can...
nutmegs, I saw some nutmegs.
He's predominantly right-footed, but can score a left-footed strike from 30 yards out. We saw that too. But the thing that I think we...
recently, right? Wasn't that this past weekend or the one before?
I believe so, yeah. The thing that I'll speak for both of us again and say that I think we both very much enjoyed, though, was the variety of his game. That it wasn't, he's just going at people every single time at pace.
Which is one of my concerns with Jonathan Amon, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, head down, let's go.
Yeah, and then contrasting that with like one of our criticisms or our concerns about Russell Knaus was that he seemed to play it safe too often and wasn't looking for it too often. It feels like Romain Gall has a good mix of both, where we saw him play simple and backwards. Sometimes we saw him play simple and lateral. We saw him play simple and forwards, but then we also saw him try to take people on, try some bits of skill, try some good like no-look reverse passes. And so it just seems like he's a little bit more complete in what he's going to be bringing to the national team, and that extends to his defensive work as well, which I think is the thing that you pointed out about what he might bring to this particular team.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly where Dave Sarachan will use him, if at all. I mean, he might just be a guy who's in camp for the first time. But if he does play left mid in that 4-1-4-1, that position has been somewhat famously a spot where the people occupying it have struggled defensively, right? Kenny Saif and Jonathan Amon both had poor games defensively at left mid. I think Romain Gall looks like a more rounded player with a better understanding of positioning and aggressive at the right times. I think he could offer something going forward, but also contribute to the defensive job of left mid, which if we have to face it, is going to be a huge part of the US game plan. Away to England and away to Italy.
And with what he's doing with Malmo, it seems like from what we've seen, they're in a weird like 3-1-4-2 attacking that maybe becomes like a 5-4-1, something like that defensively. And that's important in my mind because I like it, but it's also important because it means that he is used to playing like left center, but then also going wide and helping defend there. And so maybe he won't struggle as much with what his responsibility is in terms of sometimes being central, but sometimes being wide, but sometimes dropping into almost being a second left back. It seems like he'll maybe be a little bit more adept just because he has that familiarity at club level.
And actually, here's a good thing to point out. I think the thing that you and I both saw is when we looked at defensive highlights of Romain Gall, it wasn't just like him charging at someone like a madman and trying to make a stab at the ball. There was a lot of essentially interceptions based on him reading the angles and being in the right place at the right time. It may just be that we saw edited highlights, but I get the feeling that he just has a feel for that stuff, which maybe Kenny Saif and Jonathan Amon did not.
I'm with you. And so that's what I'll be paying attention to is you know, if he scores or has an assist or has a great attacking play, terrific. But I want to see what he does in terms of linking play from defense to attack, but also how he alleviates some of the pressure on the U.S. back line. That's a thing I want to watch.
Can I give you one downside of Romain Gall?
Sure.
Seems to play sort of left side, right-footed. Another one. Add him to the pile of left-sided, right-footed players that we have.
Hey, you know, just put him on the pile, see what happens. Could work out. You never know.
It's a very lopsided pile, is all I'm saying.
Left feet are overrated, and he can score with his left foot. So you know, that's all you need. He can. That's all you need.
Okay. What else got your attention in terms of inclusions on this roster?
I think I mentioned him already with the simple context, but Ethan Horvath being back in there, I think that was pretty notable for me. And then
you've convinced me that he's probably going to play against England, which I'm excited about.
Okay.
Unless he drops the cake.
And then there's unless he drops the cake, and then there's names I would say roughly similar to Darlington Nagbe, but maybe one step down of names that I'm not like, I didn't see this coming at all, or like, I've been waiting to see this 17-year-old get a senior call-up for so long. But it's names like Luca Della Torre and Sebastian Lletget for different reasons. But I would put them in the same category of players that we have familiarity with, that we've seen at varying levels of U.S. national teams. Luca Della Torre more so varied than Sebastian Lletget in my mind. But it's also players we haven't seen in a long time. Della Torre we haven't seen as much for Fulham. Lletget had the lengthy injury that he recovered from. But both of them being back in the squad, it's interesting to me both in terms of more central midfield players that Dave Sarachan might give some minutes to, but just also...
They can both also play wide, which is interesting. So they could end up anywhere across that midfield.
Yes, there's that. And then it's also the case that it's two guys who we haven't seen much from under Dave Sarachan suddenly getting that call-up, potentially getting minutes. It's two more people who, you know, will happily be a part of the Triple S.
So Leggett, for those who don't know, he essentially had a false start of an international career, right?
Yes.
Because he was called up by Arena when Arena took over, was really, really good, I believe against Honduras for a little while. Then he had that horrible injury and was out for a long, long time.
Yeah, scored a goal and then had the horrible injury.
Oh, it's worth remembering as well, Sargent was on the coaching staff and was on the coaching staff at the LA Galaxy before, so he's someone who's very familiar with Sebastian Leggett. He's probably a big supporter of Sebastian Leggett. So my guess is, as soon as Leggett was fully fit enough, Sargent was always going to get him back onto a national team, and that's why it sort of makes sense that he's part of the Sargent send-off series, even though he hasn't been involved for the entire stretch of Sargent's reign up till this point.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Luca Della Torre is interesting to me because I would put him more in the category of Tim Weah, Josh Sargent, of talented players based in Europe who aren't actually playing for their clubs but we know have a lot of skills.
Yeah. I think I would agree with that, but it's also still a strange inclusion to me because there's so many other central midfielders here that like you wonder if he's going to get minutes or if he's just being called in to see what he's capable of in camp. But then that makes me wonder, well, if you're doing that with a Fulham player, with a Fulham team that isn't doing very well, why wouldn't you do that with another Fulham player who's doing very well, or isn't doing very well in the form of Tim Ream? So it's a strange contrast of one gets the call up, one does not. Which maybe it's just a youth thing.
It's an eye to the future, right? Because probably what's going to happen is Luca Della Torre is going to get 10 minutes at right mid in one of the games. Yeah, that's my guess.
Yeah, I mean, and then this is. I said I was going to stop talking about it one more time. Again, it's the frustrating thing of like, but because it's Dave Sargent, it sort of is like, but this maybe isn't anything. Like if it were the new coach calling in Luca Della Torre, we might see it as like, oh, he wants to see what this youngster is capable of and how he fits in. And then maybe this is building towards Luca Della Torre being a consistent player, at least in that midfield, or a consistent nominee in that midfield. But because it's Dave Sargent still in charge, it's more like, maybe we'll get 10 minutes and then we'll remember that he played 10 minutes for the USA a year from now.
But that's what happened against Ireland, right? He just got that 10 minutes right at the end. All right, the other notable inclusion on this roster to me is the inclusion of 3 right-backs. Yeah. We have gone all in on right-backs here. We've got DeAndre Yedlin, we've got Reggie Cannon, who a lot of people were impressed with after the Peru game. And we've also got Shaq Moore is back. Yeah. What are we going to do with 3 right-backs?
Well, so that's first of all, why does that stand out to you? Why are you surprised by that?
Because usual protocol is to only select 2 right-backs, right? And, correct me if I'm wrong, Dallas are not in the playoffs. Newcastle are not in the playoffs, and more Spanish team Royce are not in the MLS playoffs. So there's no reason to for one person covering for another while they're away. It's 3 players who are fully available called up for right back. And I think we've really had a theme. This is like the Sargent send-off series thing, right? Like here's 3 guys that I've worked with over the spell of my US national team tenure. Let's call them all up. Get them all in camp. I can get high fives off all of them.
Did we ever come up with a term for the conspiracy where it's not quite a conspiracy theory, but it's just like a theory we have? I guess we could just call it a theory. But here's a possible theory, is that in the Colombia-Peru game, you had Yedlin play, I believe, the entire Colombia game. Maybe he was spelled at the very end by Reggie Cannon. But Reggie Cannon definitely started against Peru, but then was subbed out for DeAndre Yedlin.
Oh, yeah, he got injured, right? Cannon was injured.
And a lot of people were frustrated by that. So maybe there's a chance that it's like Sargent wants to have DeAndre Yedlin play a game, then it will be Reggie Cannon. And if Reggie Cannon needs a substitution or you want to try something else, then that's Shaq Moore insteod of DeAndre Yedlin playing another 15 minutes.
So he has different options.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible. It seems unlikely to me because 2 right backs would be plenty. But who knows? It may also just be the case that after that first game, like say DeAndre Yedlin plays against England, which would make sense, then maybe he lets Yedlin go back to Newcastle. He's not around for the Belgium game, but you want that backup right back so you don't have to take Yedlin to Belgium.
I think that might be it. I think you might be right. Yeah, this is more like there's definitely going to be some churn between the 2 rosters. It's not just going to be the MLS players coming in for the second game. It could also be some other turnover in between as well. All right, so 3 right backs don't make a wrong.
They do not. Here's my question, though. With that in mind, I'm realizing...
That's worth a round of applause, I feel like.
You want me to applaud you now? Are you just turning into a dictator?
Can we not just stop for 10 seconds while you applaud? No? All right.
We can, if you would like to insert that.
I'm going to edit it in afterwards. Hey, this is Daryl cutting in after recording, not to add a fake round of applause from Taylor, even though I still feel like he should have done it. But to let you know, there is actually, weirdly, a 4th right back who's been called up. His name is Stephen Cherundolo, 39 years old. So you may remember Steve Cherundolo, probably the best right back we've had in a long, long time. Retired from international football a while ago. He was an assistant coach recently at Hanover, even more recently, an assistant coach at Stuttgart. He was let go there along with the entire coaching staff. So Steve Cherundolo currently basically not working, I assume looking for coaching jobs, but he's going to be part of the US men's national team coaching staff for these games against England and Italy. I, for one, am really excited just to see Cherundolo back involved with US soccer.
But that does make me wonder, though. You're right that we're going to see players. We're going to see some roster churn, some players sent home. Is there a chance we only see Christian Pulisic play one game and then he lets him go, or because we haven't seen him, do we see Christian Pulisic get two?
At this point, I'd take one game from Christian Pulisic.
Mm-hmm.
So in some ways, that's a notable inclusion, right? Mm-hmm. Christian Pulisic is on the roster.
Yeah. For now.
Yeah, for now.
We'll see what happens. We're recording this. I don't know if their game against Atletico Madrid was over.
It's not yet.
All right, so hopefully he made it that entire game, or at least was subbed out without injury, so then he can still be in consideration.
Yeah. So, if anything, Pulisic should not be part of the Sargent send-off series, right? Yeah. But I'm glad that we get to see him on this roster. Essentially, we need him to have a chance against England and Italy.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, and it is still like that. The possibility of having him and Weston McKennie in like a starting 11 together still isn't a thing we've seen. So that would be very exciting to see what they're capable of. Mm-hmm. Maybe, did we see it against Bolivia now that I say that?
McKennie and Pulisic, yes. What we haven't seen
is them do it competitively, and then is
them with Tyler Adams. Mm-hmm. We haven't seen Adams, McKennie, Pulisic. The
but
problem is Adams probably won't be involved in the England game because he's got that playoff on Sunday night against Columbus Crew. So they may all be ships that don't quite pass in the night. Again.
It's possible. Yeah. But I would still be okay with just McKennie and Pulisic. And if you have to leave Adams out, you have to leave Adams out for that England game. But I do think that maybe the presence of Pulisic raises McKennie's game just a teensy-tiny little bit. Oh, yeah. And playing against stronger opposition, I'd like to see what they both can offer.
All right. Okay, yeah. I look forward to seeing that. In some ways, that Bolivia game only half counts.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think so.
Any other notable inclusions before we get on to what we're looking for in this game?
No, I think that's about it for me, for the notables.
So this game is next Thursday. The England game is next Thursday, November 15th. The Italy game is the following Tuesday, which I believe is the 20th. So we're going to have a preview of the England game closer to the time, right? So right now we're just going to look at, over the span of these two games, what are we looking to see from this US men's national team? What do we hope we see or learn or find out, or what happens over the span of these two games?
I mean, I think I would like to continue to see at least in one game a starting partnership of Matt Miazga, John Brooks.
Yes.
From everything I've heard, Matt Miazga has not been having the greatest time in France of late. I can't say I've watched Nantes with like enough familiarity or enough regularity to know what exactly is happening to him there.
If you'd watched them lately, you would have not seen him in the starting 11.
There we go. So I think I would still like to see him come back to the national team and have that as sort of his like respite of he comes in, he's around people he's familiar with, he's got the partnership with Brooks, and he looks solid again. If we see them come in and maybe Miazga struggles a little bit, maybe Miazga doesn't play, that to me is a very big warning sign that things are not right.
Okay, I am hoping to see the good side of Kenny Seyf.
Okay.
So I've seen enough of Kenny Seyf in the past to know that there is a very good player there. Mm-hmm. But what we saw against Colombia was obviously very concerning.
Yep.
So I'm hoping that at some point over these two games we get to see Kenny Seyf impress in a US men's national team shirt.
Yeah.
Right? So fingers crossed for that.
I'm with you on that. I want to see Bobby Wood not made the sacrificial lamb, because I feel like what routinely happens with these friendlies when we have two is Bobby Wood plays the first one and things don't always necessarily go wrong, but it seems like he does a lot of thankless running and a lot of isolated Bobby Wood and a lot of long ball that he has to try to bring down and hold and wait for somebody else to support. And then the second game, maybe he plays, but a lot of times it's somebody else, but they figured things out a little bit.
I mean, the pattern against Peru was Wood played up front against Colombia and had a thankless job because Colombia had most of the ball. Mm-hmm. Then Sargent starts against Peru and US have a lot more attacks, right? So he gets to roll in there and score.
And I mean, certainly it's the case that like you could argue Colombia is stronger than Peru.
Definitely,
but I think it's also just, I think they do figure some things out and adjust what they're doing a little bit and get a little bit more regularity.
Yeah.
But it feels like Bobby Wood is always in the first wave and not in the one that gets to go up against the defense that's a little bit more tired or a little bit more or is involved in an attack that has things a little bit more figured out.
I guess the interesting thing here is England, Italy are of equal strength, right? So maybe that means that Bobby would get a fairer shot as opposed to being made to face the definitely better team.
Well, but it's not even the better team for me. It's what I'm saying is like more so that he has to be the one who plays on the team when they're like just getting into camp. They've had a few days, and then they play that opponent. Then they have a few more days where they're like, okay, that didn't work. We want you to play a little bit further forward, and this person's going to be here, and we'll see if that forward gets more help. But then it's not Bobby Wood in that second game.
I think you're very generous in assuming that the US figured things out between games, as opposed to just one team was better than the other.
That's what.
The last two camps have been Brazil, then Mexico's B team, and then Colombia, then Peru's team.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I still think Peru is closer to Colombia than maybe might seem
geographically.
No, I think talent-wise, I think James Rodriguez makes Colombia an incredible team.
I guess
if you put James Rodriguez on Peru, I think you get just as strong of a team. And that's a big step off, I know, to say like, well, if you add one world-class player, then they become a world-class team. But Peru's pretty darn good. So I think that the U.S. looked better against them. I do think they figured some stuff out or made a few adjustments.
Good news is there's no James Rodriguez for England or Italy. There's not even a James Milner, unless there's a surprise unretirement from him.
You never know. Rooney's in there. You never know.
Anything else that you're looking to see?
Yeah, I talked about Bobby Wood. I'll say Josh Sargent as well, just to see. We haven't seen him playing for Werder Bremen, the senior team yet, but I still want to see how
he keeps saying, maybe he'll be there soon.
Certainly do. But I just want to see his continued development and if he continues to look at ease with the national team, because he has in the past.
Yeah.
I would hope that continues.
And I'm not saying this as an England fan, but there's some good defenders he's going up against, right? For England and then also for Italy. So that would be a really good test for him, I think, right? Especially because they will be a step above the Peruvian defenders, for an example.
Speaking of which, I know we're going to talk more about the England game later on, obviously.
Next week.
Next week, yeah. But what would be your ideal result from that England game, given that you have the accent that you have?
3-3 draw, then we have lots of goals to talk about on the Total Soccer Show. Right. Yeah, I really, in some ways, I can't lose in that game, not least because the US doesn't really have much on the line, right? All they have on the line really is getting experience for some of these younger players, whereas England have the game against Croatia to follow the next Tuesday. So in many ways, it's more important for England because they'll be tuning up ready for the Croatia game.
So actually, with that in mind, do you think that we see their strongest team, or do you think
no? Because Wayne Rooney's going to play.
There we go. So do you think? Do you think it is then a team that maybe is sort of it's Rooney's send off? We've got the Croatia game. We'll just play this friendly as a friendly, and then we'll focus on Croatia.
I think it would definitely be a more experimental team or a weakened team because the more important game with points on the line is next up, right? So maybe the US has more of a chance for that reason.
We saw it on that Nike ad like a decade ago. Wayne Rooney in goal.
Maybe Wayne Rooney in goal. Just in case people don't know, Wayne Rooney's been called up as like a ceremonial, get your final ever cap, and also Wayne Rooney's Foundation. There'll be some fundraising for them, not from gate receipts, but essentially that will be promoted. It's like a one-off Wayne Rooney, almost testimonial type game.
All right, and I mean this sincerely. You can take it as a joke if you want to. What do you think it would take for Wayne Rooney in this game, if he plays against the United States, which we expect he will, to get like another look? Like, what do you think it would be like if he scored a double hat trick? I'm assuming that Gareth Southgate would be like, maybe come back for the next camp.
No, I don't think
it doesn't matter whatever he does.
He's retired from international football. He himself retired from international football and said, "Hey, I think after conversation with Gareth Southgate, there's no appetite for him to come back." And almost, I honestly think, I don't take offense at you asking that, but that question has been asked in the English media in a fearful kind of way. Like, what if he plays well? Are we going to be stuck with him again? And this whole anti-Wayne Rooney thing is coming up at a time when England fans should be just celebrating Wayne Rooney and enjoying the fact that he's getting this send-off type thing.
But see, that's the thing is like...
It's the Sargent and Rooney send-off.
But aren't you there framing it as a negative, though? Because I'm literally asking, like, what if he looks really good for England? Like, then what if he has rediscovered that form?
Then we celebrate that he has this great send-off, and then we send him off.
Triple hat trick.
Well, then we'd have to ask a lot of questions about Matt Miazga.
Okay, that's true. So Wayne Rooney has to score 10 goals. Yeah. Otherwise, he's definitely done with the England national team. All right.
I'm going to focus us back on the United States. Another thing I'm hoping to see is a positive performance from Anthony Robinson, who is, by the way, English-American, right? So he'll be literally on home soil.
Yeah.
Unless the Wembley field is imported.
Half home soil.
Half home soil, yeah. So
he's not Dracula. He doesn't have to have his soil where he goes.
No, that's why they put it up the left side.
Is that what it is?
So, yeah, it'd be good to see Anthony Robertson one more time. The interesting thing is Jorge Villafana is also on this roster.
But is also still in the playoffs at time of recording.
Yes, of
course.
So
that's the other confusing thing.
Is he back with Portland?
Yeah, yes. So
they play Thursday night, right?
They do.
So there's a chance he could be there for the Monday practice.
There's a chance. Yeah, we'll see how that result goes. But yeah, I think that's probably still going to be Anthony Robertson against England, maybe somebody else against Italy.
Okay, anything else to add before we move on here?
Marky Delgado is there? I feel like we should always make an effort to say other names. But yeah. I mean, there are other names that we have not talked about. We mentioned Julian Green very briefly. Other players are
Green
involved.
versus Nagbe for the attacking midfield type player, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, unless you go 4-1-4-1 and you do somehow get Tyler Adams in there, or maybe you have Kellen Acosta as like a number 6, and then you have McKennie and who knows as your...
I'm going to stop you there, then we'll do lineups.
See, there we go. See, you can go down this route. You can go down this route. DeAndre Yedlin, attacking midfield. I mean, please don't do that.
All right, before we move on, want to let people know about a thing that we discovered yesterday, which is that there is a Reddit Total Soccer Show page.
There sure is.
Not run by us. We don't know who's running it, but we do know it was started. It looks like there's a bit of a false start, and then it's recently picked up some steam. I think there are now 3 Reddit moderators there. It's I've forgotten how Reddit works. Is it reddit.com/r/Total Soccer Show?
Yep.
Or probably totalsoccershow.com/ totalsoccershow.reddit.com would also work, I believe. I'll put a link in the show notes so people can click it. But basically, we want to get behind this Reddit page, which we're really excited to find, right? I think I tweeted that you and I can now die happy.
Yep.
There's a Total Soccer Show Reddit page. If you're a TSS listener and you're a Redditor, so are you using that correctly? Click that link in the show notes and go get involved in the Total Soccer Show Reddit. We want to get behind it and not get involved, but at least promote it. Yes. Is that the correct way to handle this?
Yeah, yes. I think so. That definitely works for me. We also wanted to talk about the Scouting Network. Obviously, we've got some reports to get to, but we also wanted to let people know that we know it's a busy time of the year. Yeah. So if you maybe have neglected your scoutee for a little bit of time, totally fine. We get that. But if you're going to send a catch-up report, you don't maybe need to do that.
Yeah, so one thing it's really worth pointing out is if you send us, here's the last 6 months of my scout because I haven't reported. I know that it's like you catching up, but it's actually not helpful to us because then we can't read 6 months worth of news on one show. So if you want to get back into it, don't worry about what you've missed. Just start with the most recent week. Find the most recent thing your player has done. Just send us that one thing. And then you're like back on the track right there, right?
Because we've also had the
experience... You have to make up all ground.
You don't, because there's also the experience we've had of a person wants to like continue to scout their player, but maybe we talked about like a U.S. game on a Thursday show, and then they send us a report on Monday, but if we've already talked about it, it makes it a little bit difficult to go back and then say like, oh yeah, we talked about this, but he played and scored a goal or whatever. Yeah. So like it's better to just keep it rolling and focus on the next one. And Daryl won't be too sad and won't cry too hard if he doesn't get a report.
One player we haven't got any reports on, and I know that we've assigned multiple people to scout him, it's never quite stuck, Gideon Zelalem. We don't have any reports on, but we do know that Zelalem is back. Tyler's looking at me. Is there a report on Zelalem in here?
No, there's not.
There's not, okay. So Zelalem is back in practice, back in training, and has played for an Arsenal either U21 or U23 team. So he's taken the field again. The man is fit, so we can all be excited about him again. If you're one of the people who's been assigned to scout Gideon Zelalem,
one of the people,
like get on it this week and let us know that you're still scouting him. We'll give it a week or so. If not, we will reassign Gideon Zelalem so that we can get somebody to keep track of his progress now that he's healthy and back to playing soccer again.
That works for me. And with all of that said, let's get to some actual reports we've gotten, starting with Russell Varner scouting Alex Mendes, 18-year-old American midfielder for SC Freiburg.
And USA Under-20s.
That would be the one. Mendes came off the bench in the USA's 13-0 drubbing of the Virgin Islands.
The US Virgin Islands. British Virgin Islands were not damaged in this game.
Sure. He earned an assist off a well-worked set piece in the 66th minute to make it 9-0, and 12 minutes later scored from the penalty spot with a confident strike to the keeper's left in the USA's 6-1 win over Trinidad and Tobago.
Which is big, right? That was the other dangerous opponent, the only dangerous-ish opponent in this group stage.
According to Daryl Grove. Yeah. 6-1 indicates not that dangerous, but yeah. Mendes had another solid outing, getting a goal and an assist and looking dangerous throughout. He also had a lovely roulette turn under pressure before hitting the post from 35 yards out that we think maybe the keeper got a hand to.
Yeah, I think so too, yeah. It was a lovely roulette, though.
Yeah. It is a strange thing that like 6-1 against Trinidad is like, I mean, that was the closest game.
Yes. Matt Compton is scouting Juan Pablo Torres, the 19-year-old American midfielder for Sporting Lokeren. Matt says Juan Pablo Torres has found minutes tough to come by in the Belgian Pro League, where he's yet to make the 18 for Sporting Lokeren. Luckily, he's gotten opportunities for the US Under-20s at the CONCACAF Championship. He started the first game against Puerto Rico, came on as a sub against Trinidad and Tobago, and he scored the Americans' final goal in the 6-1 rout.
Final U20 report comes from Corey Walters, scouting Paxton Pomykal, 18-year-old midfielder for FC Dallas.
Double P!
Pomykal has played in all 3 of the USA's U20 games so far, getting 3 goals and 2 assists. He was also involved in 2 other goals, including drawing a penalty against Puerto Rico.
Well done, Paxton Pomykal. All right, away from the U20s, Todd Brannan is scouting Cameron Carter-Vickers, the 20-year-old American defender on loan at Swansea from Tottenham. Todd says, in the 4 games since the international break, CCV... Oh, this is a catch-up report. CCV has 1 start and 1 sub-appearance for Swansea, upping his appearances from 2 to 4. Swansea have played 11 games in league play since CCV completed the transfer from Tottenham and have won 4 of those games. Carter-Vickers' only 4 appearances have been in those victories. So Swansea wins every game that CCV appears in.
See, there we go. That's not a coincidence at all. I'm sure it's all because he's in there. He is also, we didn't mention his name, he is also on this roster for the USA.
Yep, he'll be the other English-American alongside Anthony Robinson.
There we are. Jaron Wright scouting Justin Glad, 21-year-old American center back for RSL. It was another catch-up report of sorts, but essentially
this is the last day of catch-up reports.
I'll do an abbreviated version. Basically, he had a rough end to the season, specifically 2 games against the Portland Timbers in which that defense gave up 7 goals, one of which was directly his fault. He was then left out of the lineup after 50 straight starts in a game that turned out to be their win against that secured their playoff berth, but then he wasn't involved in the playoffs very much. So it seems like a very sad end to the season for Justin Glad.
So what, Silva and Anua are starting ahead of him. Ian Shank is scouting Fernando Arce Jr., the 21-year-old American midfielder on loan at Dorados from Tijuana. Fernando Arce did again, says Ian. He scored on a corner to lead Diego Maradona's Dorados into the Apertura playoffs in Asensio Ameques with a 1-0 win over Venedos. Arce got goal side of his marker to knock in a badly headed clearance from a Venedos defender. That's back-to-back games with a goal for Fernando Arce Jr.
Can you imagine reading this report after seeing Diego Maradona at the World Cup? Like in that Argentina-Nigeria game, can you imagine them being like, oh yeah, he's going to get a job in Mexico managing right after this? Surprising. Surprising world we live in.
If you told me second tier, I might have been like, maybe.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Brian Oyster scouting Serginho Dest, the 18-year-old American winger for Ajax. On his 18th birthday, Serginho Dest started on the left wing, scored a goal, and had an assist in the Ajax U19's 5-0 win over a weird combination team that I'm not even going to go for. The goal was a left-footed volley from just inside the top of the box.
You didn't have to say Nijmegen FC Os under-19s?
No.
What's wrong with you?
With a dash in between, I'm confused. Do they have 2 teams that they merge into one?
No, you have to say oblique.
Okay, my mistake.
Russell Findlay is scouting.
Is that what you call that?
Possibly, I might be wrong. I was wrong about Der Spiegel. Spiegel means mirror, not eye.
Okay,
yeah. Russell Findlay is scouting.
But der means the, so I win.
He who dares. Russell Findlay is scouting Eric Palmer Brown, the 22-year-old American defender on loan at Nek Breda from Manchester City. Russell says, after a way too long hiatus, EPB went 90 on Saturday in Breda's 2-1 win against Heracles. Multiple reports said he had a solid game and was not responsible for the goal.
Keith Kalmbach scouting Marcelo Palomino, 17-year-old American midfielder for Unattached FC. Again, that's Marcelo Palomino. Keith has been doing some digging into the news that Palomino has left the Dynamo Academy. There isn't much news out there, but he definitely is not listed on the Dynamo's Academy roster, and a post on Big Soccer notes that he turns 18 in May, so he likely can't move to Europe until the summer transfer window.
This is a very common occurrence with young American players, right? They just wait until they turn 18 so they can flee Major League Soccer.
Yes, but it's still confusing because, as Keith notes, he could have then had another full season with the academy before moving on, which concerns Keith, given that the general vibe around Palomino, around people who watch Palomino, was that he could have been contending for minutes as early as next season.
So does he have a homegrown deal with Dynamo or not?
I think he was just in the academy. I'm not sure he had a homegrown deal yet.
I don't know the answer to that. Travis Mitchell is scouting Jose Carranza, the 19-year-old American midfielder for Louisville City FC. Travis says Carranza joined Louisville City in August from ATL United. What's up?
Oh, nothing. Go ahead.
Okay. Jose played in 6 games down the stretch, scored a goal in his first game in purple against the Richmond Kickers, and assisted on a goal in September against Ottawa.
He was not involved in their Eastern Conference final, which they won to send them to the USL final. They beat the New York Red Bulls 2. But yeah,
5-1, I believe.
No Jose Carranza in that game.
We haven't talked about USL Cup. The USL Cup is going to feature Louisville City.
Yep.
Will you give me thumbs up for the pronunciation? Is that what it was?
Louisville.
Against Phoenix Rising, featuring Didier Drogba. Player owner in possibly his last ever game of professional soccer. Drogba will be in the USL Cup final.
There we go.
It's worth watching.
I'm pretty excited. And former Richmond Kickers players Brian Ownby and George Davis IV, could win a USL title. That also makes me happy.
I kind of want Drogba to do it, though.
I'm pulling for Louisville. I love Drogba. I'm pulling for Louisville. Andy Hollums scouting Julian Green, the aforementioned 24-year-old American forward on loan at Greuther Fürth from VfB Stuttgart. Green assisted on the equalizer as Greuther Fürth drew with VfL Bochum this weekend. Green lobbed multiple defenders to find striker Daniel Keita-Ruel in the 90th minute and salvage a point for the home side.
I also heard that Green played as like a number 10 in that game, but only because all the other number 10s were injured.
Oh, that's good, that's bad sort of situation
Very
there.
much so. Andrew Baird is scouting Josh Perez, the 20-year-old American winger for LAFC. You may remember Perez used to be with Fiorentina. Andrew says, after a loan spell at Phoenix Rising, Perez got limited minutes for LAFC in the last month or so of the Major League Soccer season. He did not make the bench for the final 3 matches and wasn't in the squad for their playoff loss to RSL. Andrew points out that Perez joined LAFC in August, meaning he was in pre-season form when the rest of the team were already at peak fitness. However, he also notes that 2019 will be a make or break year for Josh Perez. He turns 21 in January, and if he's loaned out again, being an 18-year-old playing against Milan looks slightly different than being 21 in the USL.
Yes, which is, I understand, like, it still sounds kind of brutal to say, but it is the case that if you're playing in Serie A when you're 18, it's definitely a decline to be in USL at 21.
Fair.
So we'll see what happens the next season. But in the meantime, we have more reports with Guy Edwab scouting Serge Gnabry, 23-year-old German wide forward for Bayern Munich. Gnabry has his first Bayern Munich goal at home versus Freiburg, or he had his first goal at home versus Freiburg, and it came from running straight at the timid Freiburg defense and taking a shot at goal. Gnabry needs to keep producing if he wants to keep his spot, but looks better every single game. This was in response to guys saying that basically Gnabry looked better when he was allowed to play wide and like stay wide and cross, and this was an example of him doing the opposite and really going at the defense and being a bit more direct and getting the result.
All I know is when Alex Mendes is finally allowed to play for Freiburg, none of that is going to be allowed to happen.
Yeah, that makes sense.
He'll put a stop to it.
That checks out.
Jeff Markman is scouting Reece Nelson, the 18-year-old English midfielder on loan at Hoffenheim from Arsenal. Jeff says, Nelson opened the scoring in Hoffenheim's 4-1 win over Leverkusen in stunning fashion this weekend. In the 19th minute, Nelson was fed the ball off a short corner in space outside the 18-yard box. When no defender stepped to him, he smashed a curling right-footed shot from the left edge of the box into the far top corner. He then made a substitute appearance in a 2-0 defeat to Leipzig midweek in the DFB Pokal.
I feel like Arsenal fans, not that they're not, but Reece Nelson should be getting more attention. That he's playing for a Champions League team and scoring goals for them in the Bundesliga. Feels like that should be a bit more exciting, but maybe he goes the way of Serge Gnabry.
I mean, they got other attacking midfielders to be excited about, right?
Well, there is that. Yeah. There is that. Mark Gardberg scouting Patrick Schick, the 22-year-old Czech striker for Roma. Schick put in 22 minutes in a weekend draw with Fiorentina, bringing his Serie A total to 250 goalless minutes this season. That's not ideal for a striker. Google alerts tend to be about his sister, a Czech supermodel, and ever-growing trade rumors for Patrick. Roma are now 15 points behind Juve after 11 games played, so you'd have to think Coach Eusebio's days are numbered, says Mark.
Dylan Viach is scouting Kai Havertz, the 19-year-old German midfielder for Bayer Leverkusen. Dylan says that Kai started in a 4-1 loss to Hoffenheim this past weekend, with Leverkusen lining up in a 3-4-3.
So thank you to everybody who sent in all of those many scouting reports. They were very good. But yes, we hope that maybe we don't need the catch-up ones.
Yeah,
so
no
much.
more catch-ups. Just tell us what happened this week. Tell us what happened this week, and we will read it on the show. If you've signed up for the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network, I will get you your scout this week if you email me. Email me Daryl, D-A-R-A-L, at TotalSoccerShow.com. Let me know you're waiting. 2 people have already done so. I will get those to you. Anybody else, email me. Tell me you're waiting. I will get you your scout. There are lots of young players waiting to be assigned.
It is a few minutes before 5 p.m. on Tuesday, November 6th, as we finish recording this show.
Are you calling the election?
If Daryl puts it out in time, maybe you hear this before the polls close. If you do, go vote. And if you don't, thank you for voting. Now I'm going to go home and anxiously stare at the TV screen for the next 12 to 14 hours.
Same's is.
All right.
All right. Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
You're welcome. That's my anxiety coming through.
Listeners, thank you for listening.
Right, I got you, buddy. everybody.
And we will talk to you again tomorrow.